We bring in Sean Salisbury. Sean, who is the morning host of the Sean Salisbury Show, Sportstalk 790 in Houston, former NFL quarterback. How big did this get in Houston there, Sean?
First off, Dan, was I not in that playoff
Let me
win
see.
thing?
Let me see. Let me see.
I'm what, 30 less than Brady?
You never won a playoff game?
I bid it as a starter. No, well, the Cup. I won the Cup.
The Grey Cup. The Grey Cup.
There you go. I've been in playoff games, but I didn't win one as a starter. I got us there, but I didn't win one. Let's just put it that way.
Brady has never won a Grey Cup.
You know what? That's a one heck of a point.
Yeah.
So who's better, me or Brady? That's what you got to ask
you
yourself.
You are better in Canada than Brady is.
Yeah, I've got far more in north of the border than Brady does. Dan, you asked me about Watson. First of all, my head's going to explode over this.
Okay.
In a Houston season when there wasn't much going on in any of the sports, we've got Harden wants out. The Astros had to go through what they went through. And self-inflicted. And now the second best building franchise player in this league. We're talking about being unhappy. Now, when Cal McNair promised him that he'd at least have some input, I get his frustration. If you're going to say something, live by it. If not, then don't talk to the quarterback. Just let him do his thing. Deshaun's not getting traded. Goff got 2 1s, 2 2s, and 2 3s. Dan, this is Herschel Walker Hall. Because if I took Deshaun Watson and stuck him in Kansas City, and I think Mahomes is the best in the league, I'm talking about building franchise for the next 7 to 10 years, that the Kansas City Chiefs would still be the number 1 seed in 14-2 or 13-3 if Watson was there.
Yeah.
If Mahomes was in Houston, the Texans would still be 4-12. So I'm just telling you that the distance between 1 and 2 is closer than the distance between the second and third best franchise builder in this league. You cannot trade Deshaun Watson. I know he should be frustrated. The ownership is dysfunctional. Eric Bieniemy should get an interview, but you can't trade him because unless you want to give me 11 players or 3 1s, 2 2s, a starter, and another starter, I'm not even answering your damn phone call.
Yeah, but if Watson wants out, then what do you do?
Well, Dan, he's under contract for what, 5 years? He's a $40 million a year player. With his DNA and his character, okay, let's say it's August and they haven't traded him. Let's just for fun say that. You think he's not showing? Name me a quarterback who's in his mid-20s in the history of this game, the number one we've even thought about trading as an elite franchise quarterback, or who's held out of camp for when you're making that money. Find me one. It's not going to happen.
But what's management do to appease him, Sean?
How about just simply call him up? We'll give you input. And, oh, by the way, we'll interview Eric Bieniemy. It doesn't cost that much to interview a guy who, by all standards, is not only prepared, is ringing endorsements from Andy, from Pat Mahomes, and from Deshaun Watson and around the league. Other people are interviewing Eric Bieniemy. What's it take, Dan? Put him on a corporate plane or get on Zoom and find out what you need to know for 2 hours. I don't think the GM, Nick Caserio, has anything to do with Deshaun's frustration. I think it's the dysfunction of the constant one thing, do another. Deshaun should be frustrated. Wouldn't it be they paid him, so he got paid, put some players around him, which is going to be Nick Caserio's job. But, Dan, just bring in a guy, at least interview the guy. You don't have to let Deshaun hire the guy, but Deshaun should have some input, shouldn't he?
No.
All your great players should have some input.
I don't think Ben Roethlisberger has input. I don't think Drew Brees has input. Brady didn't have input.
Okay. If they were going to trade Michael Thomas, you don't think that Sean Payton would have the respect? Or if they were going to trade DK Metcalf in Seattle, I didn't say make the decision. You don't think at least a text message saying we're considering doing this. What do you think? Dan, I'll tell you this, and this is honest to God truth. When I was in San Diego, and I'm no player, there's about 8 of us, that our general manager in San Diego, when Bobby Ross was on his way out, called us in to ask what we thought about a possible new replacement. A guys who'd been in the league a while. And now listen, I wasn't exactly your starter for 10 years. Called us in and wanted, and Bobby Beathard, and we didn't make the decision. He just wanted some input for guys that were there because he loved Bobby Ross, and we did. So input. So why wouldn't you, and if you're not giving input, I don't believe in letting them make a decision. Brady, Manning, Watson, Wilson. But I do. Why wouldn't I have LeBron James at least give me some insight? Why wouldn't I let Deshaun Watson give me insight? I just signed him for $200 or $175 million, and then go make your decision. And what does it cost to interview a guy to appease the guy who, quite frankly, is a top 3 player at his position in this league?
I wouldn't have given him that, hey, we're going to consult with you.
The promise initially. Amen.
Yes.
You're exactly
right. But
right.
if you give it to him, then you can't go, well, we're going to let you be consulted on certain things, but not this. Then I have a problem with that.
Amen. And I said it out earlier today. I said, listen, if you're the owner, just don't say anything. Be the owner. Let the GM. Dan, I've been in teams that I'll bet you there's players across this league that have never shaken hands with the owner of their franchise. Now, meaning, the owners kind of, sometimes you don't even see them in the building for months or 2 years. So if you're going to go to your franchise player and promise him, live up to the promise. Because here's a problem. When you lie to people or you go back on promises like this committee, like the Corn Ferry, like promising your quarterback, when it happens once, you say, okay, happens twice, you wonder, happens 3 times, it's a trend. Okay, everybody makes mistakes. So this has become a trend with the dysfunction that's Cal McNair and the Texans. If you're a head coach now and you're saying, okay, I got the Chargers and Herbert, I got a great player in Watson, but the franchise dysfunction, why would I go there to be a part of this? And it ain't going anywhere right now. And Cal McNair's created this with Deshaun Watson. We don't need number 4 unhappy, but I agree with you. I would have never tried to consult, but if a little input doesn't hurt anybody, doesn't mean you have to make the decision Deshaun wants. Just appease him after you promised him by at least giving him a 10-minute talking to.
Well, I had Mike Florio on, and he had the initial report, and he said, probably the reason why they didn't interview Bieniemy is they didn't want to interview him and then not hire him, as opposed to we're just not interviewing him. Whatever the logic is on that,
right.
That's what Florio had to say. We're talking to Sean Salisbury, morning host of the Sean Salisbury Show, Sportstalk 790 in Houston. The team most likely to be upset this weekend is?
The team that listen, the defense in Indianapolis can play against anybody. The problem I'm concerned about, I don't think you're going to get an upset this weekend, Dan. Maybe the Rams-Seahawks game, maybe.
And that's not much of an upset.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you may get an upset there, point spread-wise. But listen, you got a veteran quarterback. My concern about the Indianapolis Colts is if it's inclement weather and the wind's blowing, and you take him off his mark and he's not in rhythm throwing on time, I don't think Phillip Rivers can keep it up. But if you let him get the ball out of his hand and they run it like they did last week and keep Josh Allen from explosion, you can move the ball on Buffalo's defense a little bit. I still don't think it's going to happen. Everything would have to go perfect offensively for the Colts. I think Buffalo's a real threat to Kansas City. And here's what's ironic about the Saints game is that we always say the Saints offense, Saints offense, Saints offense. If the Saints are getting to February, I believe it's because of defense. Now, in that one, Dan, is the key is don't let Drew Brees get all that rhythm underneath. Make him push the ball down the field. And I am a bit concerned because of the inconsistency. I picked Tampa to go to the Super Bowl in August. I'm not getting off that, although I'd take Green Bay now, is that if you're the Washington football team and you can get inside pressure, we've seen some really great games, and he's playing well now from Tom and the Buccaneers. But, Dan, they've also had some clunkers that are so ugly that if you can hit them early and force a few short field turnovers, if this game's in the low 20s or teens, the Washington football team is going to win. If this game creeps into the mid-20s or upper 20s, then, and I expect it to, then Tampa's going to win the game. So probably the Rams game, but I think the favorites in these, and I don't usually like favorites all the way across the board, I think it's going to be a favorite weekend, and I think the favorites are usually going to walk away with this one.
It may sound strange, but if Kevin Stefanski was going to be able to coach in this game, I would lean towards the Browns.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I don't know what I have in Pittsburgh. Ben has not played well in the last month and a half. They got receivers who drop passes. They're not formidable in the running game. The defense is not as formidable as it once was, and it feels like the Browns at least know who they are. They may not be great, but they know who they are, and that's part of the battle in the NFL.
They got their identity finally, Dan, after a lot of years. And you know what? That's probably the best one. Here's why. And you mentioned Pittsburgh's really not making those big chunk plays. Now, they did in the second half, in their last game, the game 15. But you know what, Dan? I actually didn't even look at Cleveland as the underdog. So you're probably right. I actually think Cleveland can beat Pittsburgh. I do. Yeah. Because if you don't, with with some injuries on the defensive side, and I understand Stefanski not being there. Van Pelt's got a heavy job ahead of him. But you know how that is, Dan. Sometimes it's like, well, let's give Kevin next week. So let's reach deep inside. Now, not that should be the reason, but if you run the ball and control it and hit Ben, I'm with you. And I should have looked at that as probably the number one, but I didn't because I'm not so sure. I don't think that Cleveland right now, that they're better than Pittsburgh. I do. Mayfield got to play and be accurate, but the way they run the football and they get after Ben and prevent that big play, I don't disagree with you one bit. I actually think Pittsburgh, if I had to bet money on this game, I'm not so sure I wouldn't take Cleveland myself. So in the point spread side, it's an upset without Stefanski. I think they're going to rise. I think this is going to be a really, really, really late fourth quarter football game.
I've had people on recently, and I've asked them the following question. I'll give you Trevor Lawrence or Justin Herbert. Everybody has said Justin Herbert.
I've talked to a couple people that I asked the question, Dan, people that are either in the know or study this stuff that we do. And I said, of all the current players in the league and the draft that's coming out in 2021, would Trevor Lawrence, where would he fit in building a franchise? And not one of them's taking him outside the top 5 of the guys I've talked to. Now, for me, I understand Herbert. These same guys that are saying that now were probably 8 months ago or around draft time saying, I don't know. We all were. Let's face facts. We missed on because he didn't buy into it. It's kind of like people missed on Josh Allen. He's inaccurate. Yeah, he's completing around 70% and is an MVP candidate. I guess today I would, but if you told me right now, Dan, you got to build a franchise. And I love Herbert, but I think Lawrence is different. I would take Trevor Lawrence over Herbert. It's easy to say Herbert now because we've seen the result.
Yeah.
But I would still have to take Lawrence because I think when all is said and done, that ceiling, I think he can break a bigger hole in the ceiling than Herbert. But I'm going to tell you, this is one of the great misses by a lot of us. I didn't think Herbert would be this good this fast. And that's the number one job right now, Dan, because of the personnel around Herbert. Watson makes it an attractive job. The dysfunction makes it an unattractive job. But the Chargers' job is the number one job out there right now because of that, his brilliance early in his career.
Urban Meyer is interviewing with Jacksonville. Why would Urban Meyer take this job?
Well, there's a kid in Clemson who's pretty good. Urban's not stupid, Dad. You and I both know that. He wouldn't take the job if Gardner Minshew was the quarterback and they weren't getting. And I don't mean this disrespect to Minshew, but he's got that to build on. And I got about 10 million reasons why I wouldn't let him out of the building.
But let's say they had the number 2 pick, not the number 1 pick, Sean. Does Urban Meyer take that job?
I think Urban's ego, and I mean this affectionately, would think that he could make whoever it is, Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, that he could turn them into that guy. I believe he thinks that. Now, I know people in college and NFL, but Dan, Jacksonville's got to do something different. And I wouldn't let him outside the building today. He's proven leadership. He's won everywhere but the NFL. So until he proves to me he can't, I'm telling you, he's the number 1 coaching candidate on the planet that's not coaching. College, NFL, high school, the CFL, I don't care. If you're Jacksonville, plus people will go to the stands. You got Trevor Lawrence. I wouldn't let him out of the building. I'd pay him 6-7 years, and I'd give him $10 million and say, let's see what we got. We need a big hit. And Urban Meyer's the biggest hit on the coaching circuit right now.
I just don't think he'll last. I don't think he'll last more than 4 years, 5 years.
Will that be enough, Dan, to get them back in the hunt?
Well, it's going to take 2 years, you would think.
Right.
Right? At least, 2 years because, the Colts are good. Like if you just look at the AFC South, Tennessee is good. So you're competing in your own division. You're not even the Texans right now.
Right.
So I think he's never lost. And you know what that is. Like guys who come out of college and they're like, I lost 1 or 2 games, and all of a sudden you lose 14 or 15. I talked to Troy Aikman about it. He was like, man, I took it home with me every day. It was like something you wear. I couldn't get rid of it.
Well, think about this, Dan. And I talked to Dick Vermeil about that same thing. He said, I should have enjoyed the wins as much as I suffered from the losses, right?
Yeah.
But they don't. And Urban, right, you lose 4 games in a season, and Urban's like, I ain't lost 4 games in 14 years, dude, when I was at Bowling Green. So, Dan, well, let me ask you this. Like, let's say SC job came open. would Urban have them, or Texas, if he would have taken it instead of Sark? Would they be in the national title Final Four in 2 years?
Texas, no.
Southern Cal?
No. I'm going to say it because Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State have such a head start on everybody. And
if Jacksonville gets, if Myers signs with them and Lawrence is the call, and Urban stays around 6 years, will they win the division more than once while he's there?
I don't think he'll stay 6 years, but I would say that they would win it. I could see them winning a division. I could.
I'm not letting him out of the building, but I'm with you. If it's an 8-year contract, he ain't staying all 8 years. If that's what you mean.
Book Sean Salisbury for 6 years down the road. The next time we'll have him on will be 6 years, and then we'll bring up Urban Meyer in Jacksonville.
Hey, guess what? You're the only guys that want to book me ahead of time, so I'm in.
Have a good weekend. Thank you, Thanks. Sean. It's always
Happy New Year, Dan. Appreciate you, buddy.
Sean Salisbury, a morning host of the Sean Salisbury Show on Sports Talk 790 in Houston.